Okay, Prabhuji, I think, you should be, you're good to go, Prabhu. You can start whenever you are ready.
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody else outside of the two of us on?
No, yeah, Prabhuji, there are 6 devotees, Prabhuji,
Okay.
including us. So.
Okay. Then I think I can go ahead and start. It's
Yes.
8:03.
Sure, Prabhuji.
So, welcome, dear devotees, to Bhagavatam class. My name is Jai Sacinandana Das. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Divine Guru Srila Prabhupada. So, we'll start reading the Bhagavatam. We're on Canto 1, Chapter 8, Verse 29. I'm showing my screen. So, this is the verse here, where the section of prayers of Kunti. And yeah, so let's get started. I'll chant this verse 3 times, and then those of you that want to repeat can do so. Na veda kasched bhagavam tsikristam tava himanyasa nirnam vidambanam na yasya kasched daito asti karichid dveshyascha yasmin vishamamatir nirnam. Once again. Veda kaschet bhagavam sikristam tava himanyasya nirnam vidambanam na yasya kaschet daito asti karichit vishyascha yasmin visamamatir nirnam. Third time. Na veda kaschet bhagavam sikristam tava himanyasa nirnam vidambanam na yasya kasched daito asti kharisid dveshasya yasmin visamamatir nirnam. Would any one of you elevated souls want to recite as well?
I'm not elevated, Prabhu, but I will give it a shot.
Thank you.
Naveda kaschid bhagavam chikirshitam tabehamanasya nrinam vidambanam nayasya kaschid daitosti karhichid dveshascha yasmin vishimamatir nrinam.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
I'll try.
Thank you.
Naveda kaschid bhagavam chikrishritam tavehamanasya krinam vidambanam nayasya kaschid daitosti karhichid devasya yasmin vishamamati nirnam.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else?
Naveda kaschid bhagavam chikirsitam tave hamanasya nirnam vidambanam nayasya kaschid daitosti karchid devas yascha yasmin vishamamatir nirnam.
Thank you, Mataji. Okay. Anyone else would like to give it a shot? Or okay. So let's do the word by word. I'll say the Sanskrit and the English, and then those of you that we can all repeat. Na, does not. Veda, no. Kaschit, anyone. Bhagavan, O Lord. Sikiristam, past times. Tava, your. Ihmanyasa, like the worldly men. Nirna, of the people in general. Vidambanam, misleading. Na, never. Yasya, his. Kaschid, anyone. Daita, object of specific favor. Asti, there is. Karisit, anywhere. Dveshya, object of envy. Ja, and. Yasmin, unto him. Visama, partiality. Matihi, conception. Nirnam, of the people. Translation purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. Would anyone like to repeat this wonderful translation in English?
O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and are so misleading, You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial.
Thank you, Narottam Das. Anyone else? Okay. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Lord's mercy upon the fallen souls is equally distributed. He has no one as the specific object of hostility. The very conception of the personality of Godhead as a human being is misleading. His pastimes appear, italicized, appear to be exactly like a human being's, but actually they are transcendental and without any tinge of material contamination. He is undoubtedly known as partial to his pure devotees, but in fact, he is never partial, as much as the sun is never partial to anyone. By utilizing the sun's rays, sometimes even the stones become valuable, whereas a blind man cannot see the sun, although there are enough sun rays before him. Darkness and light are two opposite conceptions, but this does not mean that the sun is partial in distributing its rays. The sun rays are open to everyone, but the capacities of the receptacles differ. Foolish people think that devotional service is flattering the Lord to get special mercy. Factually, the pure devotees who are engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord are not a mercantile community. A mercantile house renders service to someone in exchange for values. The pure devotee does not render service unto the Lord for such exchange, and therefore the full mercy of the Lord is open for him. Suffering men, needy men, inquisitive persons, or philosophers make temporary connections with the Lord to serve a particular purpose. When the purpose is served, there is no more relation with the Lord. A suffering man, if he's pious at all, prays to the Lord for his recovery, but as soon as the recovery is over, in most cases, the suffering man no longer cares to keep any connection with the Lord. The mercy of the Lord is open for him, but he's reluctant to receive it. That is a difference between a pure devotee and a mixed devotee. Those who are completely against the service of the Lord are considered to be in abject darkness. Those who ask for the Lord's favor only at the time of necessity are partial recipients of the mercy of the Lord. And those who are 100% engaged in the service of the Lord are full recipients of the mercy of the Lord. Such partiality in receiving the Lord's mercy is relative to the recipient and is not due to the partiality of the all-merciful Lord. When the Lord descends to this material world by his all-merciful energy, he plays like a human being, and therefore it appears that the Lord is partial to his devotees only, but that is not a fact. Despite such apparent manifestation of partiality, his mercy is equally distributed. In the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all persons who died in the fight before the presence of the Lord got salvation without the necessary qualifications, because death before the presence of the Lord purifies the passing soul from the effects of all sins, and therefore the dying man gets a place somewhere in the transcendental abode. Somehow or other, if someone puts himself up open in the sun's rays, he's sure to get the requisite benefit both by heat and by ultraviolet rays. Therefore, the conclusion is that the Lord is never partial. It is wrong for people in general to think of him as partial. Na veda kaschet bhagavam sikristam tava himanyasa nirnam vidambanam na yasya kaschet daitosti karichit dveshascha yasmin visamamatir nirnam. Translation. O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes, which appear to be human and so are misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. Om Agyantimirandasya Jananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savabhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutadevi Pranami Hari Priye Hey Krishna Karuna Panchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripo Sindhubhi Evacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadda Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So continuation of the prayers of Queen Kunti. Very, very nice series of verses that we've been reading. So portions of the purport that especially drew my attention was this statement by Srila Prabhupada: the Lord's mercy upon fallen souls is equally distributed. Equally distributed. And then this other section, this sentence, the very conception of the personality of Godhead as a human being is misleading. This word, vidambanam, also translated as bewildering. In this section, he's undoubtedly known as partial to his pure devotees. But in fact, he's never partial. So he's undoubtedly known as partial, but in fact, he's never partial. Please note, known as partial versus in fact, he's never partial. And then this section. Darkness and light are two opposite conceptions, but that does not mean that the sun is partial in distributing its rays. The sun's rays are open to everyone, but the capacities of the receptacles, that means us, is differ. And then this sentence, the pure devotee does not render service unto the Lord for such an exchange, and therefore the mercy of the Lord is open for him. Contrast that with suffering men, needy men, inquisitive men, make temporary connections with the Lord to serve a purpose, a particular purpose. When the purpose is served, there's no more relationship with the Lord. So contrasting the properties of the receptacle, the pure devotee is not rendering service for an exchange, therefore they get the full mercy. The four types of people that approach Lord Krishna for a purpose, when that purpose is served, there's no more relationship with the Lord. I think we've all seen that in our interaction with the people in general. And then those who are completely against the service of the Lord are considered to be abject darkness. Those who ask the Lord's favor only at time of necessity are partial recipients, and those who are 100% engaged are full recipients. So Srila Prabhupada again contrasting the three types of general public. Those who are completely against service of the Lord in abject darkness. Those who are looking for a particular purpose, the Lord's favor, they're partial recipients. And those who are just engaged in the service are full recipients. Such partiality in receiving is relative to the recipient and not due to the partiality of the all-merciful Lord. So most people think that the Lord is partial, but it's not the Lord is partial. It's the recipient who is partial. So, and there are many other sections in here that one could focus on, but those particular aspects I found to be very important for me. So, prayers of Queen Kunti are divided into several sections, as Pranam Prabhu and other devotee mentioned last week, and others have also discussed. The first 18 to 20 is knowing the Lord. How can I know the Lord? 21 to 25 is I'm so fortunate. 26 to 28 is qualification to approach the Lord. 29 to 31 is the Lord's nature is inconceivable and bewildering. So this section describes how the Lord's nature is inconceivable and bewildering. This word, vidambanam. 32 to 36 is opinions on the Lord's birth. And 37 to 43 is an appeal for greater association that Kunti Maharani makes. So this is a section on the inconceivable and bewildering nature of the Lord. So the activities of the Lord are transcendental, but they parallel those of human beings, so people can be misled because we're thinking, like Srila Prabhupada said, the very conception of the personality of Godhead as a human being is misleading. So Kunti Maharani is trying to get into how can one easily understand you, because you exist eternally and are unborn, but you take birth. This is very bewildering. How can Bhagavan descend as a hog, Vrahadev, or fish like Matsyavatar? How can he who's unborn take birth in the prison house of Kamsa? How can Lord Krishna's friends, the Pandavas, undergo such difficulties? So she's kind of coming from this kind of inconceivable, bewildering nature of the Lord. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the inconceivable. I think this has been addressed in many of the prior verses, and then focus more on the partiality aspect, if I can. So here's there's so many pastimes of Lord Krishna that are inconceivable. For example, he's stealing butter and eventually allows himself to be tied as a baby. Yet instantly, when he encounters the two trees, Nalakvera and his brother, I don't know why his name escapes me right now, he immediately resumes his godhood and goes right between them and uproots the trees and liberates them. Here's another very inconceivable, nice pastime. This is in Canto 10, Chapter 11, Verse 7. The gopis would say, if you dance, my dear Krishna, then I shall give you half a sweetmeat. Sweetmeat means a dessert, not meat. By saying these words or by clapping their hands, all the gopis encouraged Krishna in different ways. At such times, although he was a supreme powerful personality of Godhead, he would smile and dance according to their desire, as if he were a wooden doll in their hands. Sometimes he would sing very loudly at their bidding. In this way, Krishna came completely under the control of the gopis. Sometimes Mother Yashoda and her gopi friends would tell Krishna, bring this article, bring that article. Sometimes they would order him to bring a wooden plank, wooden shoes, or a wooden measuring pot, and Krishna, when thus ordered by the mothers, would try to bring them. Sometimes, however, as if unable to raise these things, he would touch them and stand there. How's that for inconceivable nature? Just to invite the pleasure of his relatives, he would strike his body with his arms to show that he had sufficient strength. That's Krishna. I was hearing a lecture about this by His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu, who resides in Singapore. He says Krishna bends every rule possible to shower love to his devotees. There's writings about how when Krishna goes to tend to the cows, even when he's in his childhood, Yashoda Mai would pack his tiffin box, and all the other gopas thought they would carry it, since they felt Krishna was so small and too tender to carry the weight of the tiffin box. But that same little Krishna surprised everyone by the act of lifting Govardhan Hill, which is so many miles long, and he carried it just like the analogy is made of a mushroom. And he did that with not just his little finger, but the tip of the fingernail. And there's even the example of how when Krishna is lifting, if you look at the poster of Govardhan Leela, you will see that the cowherd men are using their staff to hold up the hill. So these gopis and gopas, would be amazed to see such a sight. Just imagine. Since the same small boy who could not even carry his tiffin box or the wooden planks is lifting a hill. And if we imagine how the gopis are shocked, imagine how it would have been for Indra. When Krishna is requesting Nanda Maharaj to do puja for Govardhan, instead of Indra, Indra initially, of course, took it casually. He assumed that Krishna is just a talkative child and is talking beyond his age limits. Krishna didn't appear to have the muscles to lift Govardhan Hill, but his soft lotus body, was packed only with love for the fallen souls, and that soft lotus body picked up Govardhan Hill. For Kamsa, contrasting to Indra, for Kamsa, Krishna's body looked like a thunderbolt. But for everybody else watching that pastime, all the devotees, he was just a young boy. They were scared and worried Krishna would get hurt in this big fight. So similarly, in all these pastimes, Krishna's inconceivable and very difficult to approach. Here's what Srila Prabhupada says about this in verse 16, chapter 8, canto 1. He says, where it says, "O Brahmanas, do not think this to be especially wonderful in the activities of the mysterious and infallible personality of Godhead. By his own transcendental energy, he creates, maintains, and annihilates all material things, although he himself is unborn." Purport is very nice. Srila Prabhupada says the activities of the Lord are always inconceivable to the tiny brain of the living entities. Nothing is impossible for the Supreme Lord, but all his actions are wonderful for us, and thus he's always beyond the range of our conceivable limits. So the activities are inconceivable. That is true. We just have to realize that nothing is impossible for him. But we should take in the mood that they're wonderful. So I wanted to turn my focus into the Lord's seeming partiality, which, is part of this verse. People only imagine that you are partial. You have no object of favor, nor do you have object of envy. This section here. So I wanted to spend some time focusing on that. And of course, the most common verse that people refer to is, the devotees refer to, is this one. Samaham sarva bhuteshu name dvesha asti na priyaha e bhajanti tu mam bhaktiya maite teshu cha apiham. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion as a friend is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. So Srila Prabhupada's purport is very wonderful. Highlights on this purport is that the Lord claims that every living entity in whatever form is his son. And so he provides everyone with a generous supply of the necessities of life. He's just like a cloud which pours rain all over, regardless of whether it falls on rock or land or water. But for his devotees, he gives specific attention. So this is coming back to that idea of the partiality of the recipient. The Lord, he says here distinctly, Maite, they are in me. Naturally, as a result, the Lord is also in them. This is reciprocal. This also explains the words, Yeyatamam prapadyante tam sata eva pachamiham. And this is very nice. Whoever surrenders proportionately, I take care of him. The transcendental reciprocation exists because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. Just remember this section. Because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. If a reciprocal relationship is not present between the Lord and devotee and the Lord, then there's no personalist philosophy. The Lord's reciprocation should not be considered to be under the law of karma. It belongs to a transcendental situation in which the Lord and his devotees function. I've been reading a book called Tattva Vivek, which is an explanation by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur of Eastern and Western philosophies. He says something very wonderful. He says, spirit, when it enters matter, does not lose its quality. Spirit, when it enters matter, does not lose its quality. So the Lord, who is transcendently situated, when he enters into matter, he doesn't lose his quality. And neither does the jiva. It may be covered, but it's not lost. So this is a very wonderful verse, and some of the acharyas have made wonderful comments on this. Sri Ramanujacharya says that whether the jiva or embodied being is advanced or primitive, whether the jiva is of good character or bad character, whether the jiva occupies a form as an animal, bird, or fish, or even in the stationary species of life such as trees and plants, Lord Krishna is declaring in this verse that he is the refuge to all. He is the refuge to all. And independent of any external considerations, being equal to all without distinction. So it's not only is he not partial, but he's refuge for everybody. Whoever selects the Supreme Lord, Sri Ramanujacharya continues, their life as their life and their refuge exclusively to them alone does the Supreme Lord accept and reciprocate due to their unflinching devotion. So Srila Prabhupada talked about this in the verse we had just read from Bhagavatam. I particularly appreciated the commentary of Sri Keshav Kashmiri from the Rudra Sampradaya. In this verse he says, the Supreme Lord only guides his devotees towards realization of the souls of the soul and shuns those who are not his devotees. Then he's influenced by attraction or repulsion. And if one thinks like that, then the Lord is not impartial. And to decrease or mitigate this doubt, Lord Krishna says this verse, Samaham Sarva Bhuteshu, meaning he's equal to all beings, due to the fact that he's Paramatma, residing super soul, so not just super soul, but supreme soul, residing within all beings, including divine beings, humans, animals, plants, trees, etc. And each being is characterized by qualities of their species, graded by being the best in their species, the normal or not so up to par. But none of them are disagreeable or more agreeable to him. Sri Keshav Kashmiri continues, whenever bhakti or loving devotion is offered to him from whatever level of society, he accepts it. He's not degraded if worshipped by one from the lowest position of society. Neither is he upgraded if worshipped by one from the highest position in society. For example, Gajendra was, some examples I thought of. Gajendra is an elephant, but he prayed to the Supreme Lord and was rescued by him. The forest dwellers, seeing his footprints in the forest, we know this from Lord Ram and Lord Krishna pastime, smear the dust from his footprints onto their body and experience true bliss. Guha, who is a tribal, rendered service to Lord Ram, just took him over the river Sarayu and became his friend. Hanuman is a monkey, but Sita Devi was so fond of him. So all these seemingly lowly class in each species, they receive Lord's mercy. So Sri Keshav Kashmiri points out that this demonstrates that he blesses his devotees equally, regardless of class or position. But to non-believers or those that are especially envious, and Krishna himself says this at the end when he tells Arjuna not to speak this knowledge to the envious, to them he's neutral. He doesn't hate them, but he's neutral. Just like a fire gives light and heat to whoever comes near to it. So, it is a fact that everyone is subservient to and under the shelter of Supreme Lord. This is what this Samaha Sarva Bhuteshu and Srila Prabhupada's comment says. It's a fact that everyone is subservient and under the shelter of the Supreme Lord, even if they are unable to realize this fact. But as one gains spiritual understanding or realization, then they can actually perceive the reality of being dependent. Most folks cannot perceive that reality that we're dependent. But a devotee can. So Lord's pastimes are inconceivable and seemingly partial, but we have to understand, they're meant to help us understand our ultimate dependence and our shelter is the Lord. That's why this verse uses this term, sikristam, sikristam. It is the Lord's pastime. Pastimes. You know? And the famous example, like we read with Hari Prasad Prabhu, is the Lord gives protection to sadhu and to kill the asadu. In the example, of killing demons, that is also affection. Because we know that demons were killed by the Lord. They also get immediate salvation. The result is the same. For example, it was pointed out about Putana, wanted to kill Krishna, but that's not possible. So she left her body, but the result was she became a mother, Krishna's mother. Now, not the same as Yashodamai. It is explained that Srila Prabhupada, when he talks about that pastime, explains that there's one mother who's lost all sense of God's godhood, and that's Yashodamai. So Putana is explained is in the mood of Aishwarya as a mother. So, just another example is Krishna says, Pritrinam sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam. So it seems like two purposes. One mission is Pritrinam sadhunam, and the other one is vinashaya chadushkritam. One mission is to deliver a sadhu, who's faithful. Now we know from the Shastra that sadhu means one who is in transcendental platform, engaged in devotional service. There's that famous verse, Mamchaya Abhicharena. And then it says, Saguna Samitityan. So how to go get into that Guna Samitityan? Brahma Bhuya Kalpate. Sadhu is transcendental to material qualities. But here Krishna is saying Pretanam Sadhunam, where he's delivering. So, but, Amchaya Abhicharena, Bhakti Yogana Sevaya, Saguna Samitityan, Brahma Bhuya Kalpate, that's saying that sadhu is delivered. He's transcendental platform. So, where is the necessity of Pratharanam Sadhunam, of delivering him? So, in this verse, the Dham Banam, is contrasted to Sikristam. Appears to be contradictory. But a sadhu does not require deliverance because he's already on transcendental level. But because he's eager and enthusiastic to see Bhagavan, that's his desire, therefore Krishna comes. Not for deliverance, exactly, Srila Prabhupada says in one of his lectures on this verse. He says the sadhu is already delivered, but actually to give pleasure to the sadhu. So just like the devotee wants to satisfy the Lord in all respect, similarly, more than the devotees, the Lord wants to satisfy his devotees. That is an exchange. And we can see that if in our day-to-day dealings, if we love somebody, we want to satisfy them. And they also want to reciprocate. So if that feeling is there in this material world, then how much more will it be supremely elevated in the spiritual world? So actually, Krishna has no enemy. That's why it says here, Dveshascha yasmin. Dveshas means object of envy. Yes, nobody is object of envy. And also, Na yasyas kaschit daito. Daito is object of specific favor. There's no one who is object of just a specific favor. Because who can really be Krishna's enemy and who can really be his friend? We create friends. I remember a funny story. One time I was saying to Braj Kishore Prabhu that I don't really have friends who are not devotees. I have colleagues, and because he's such a sweet devotee, he said, I have many friends. And he started laughing. If any of you know him, you know how wonderful his laugh was. But, when we create friends in a materialistic way, we expect some profit, something from them, some, not quite benediction, but some example of a loving exchange. And from somebody who we dislike or is our enemy, we expect some harmful activities. But Krishna is so perfect that no one can harm Krishna. Neither can anyone give anything to Krishna. I expect, from some friend a favor, but that's my expectation because I'm deficient and lacking something. We pick our friends because they give us something that we lack, because we feel that we're in some sort of need. And likewise, the same thing with the enemy in converse. So Krishna, being the supreme, nobody can do any harm to him. Nobody can give anything to Krishna. So as a result, he's going to have this impartiality. Here's a very nice section. And it's from Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 1. So in Maharaj Parikshit asked a question concerning how is Bhagwan, Krishna, even though he's Paramatma and friend and protector for everyone, why did he kill the demons for the sake of Indra? And Shukadev Goswami in this particular chapter delves in depth about the seeming partiality of the Lord. Because the second part of that was, how did Shishupal achieve oneness with Krishna? So Shukadev Goswami proved that because the body of the conditioned soul is infected by the three qualities of nature, dualities arise, such as friendship and enemy, attachment, detachment. But for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no such duality. So the background of this is Maharaj Yudhishthira was performing the Rajasuya sacrifice, and Narad Muni was present. And Maharaj Yudhishthira then asked Narad Muni about this pastime. And Narad Muni told about how the Lord is always impartial, even when killing demons. And he gave the example to Maharaj Yudhishthira, where that actually happened at the Rajasuya, where Shishupal merged into the body of the Supreme Lord. And as a result, once he said that, then Maharaj Yudhishthira asked Naradji to explain this. And this chapter explains how all the sadhus that were at that Rajasuya sacrifice became immediately attracted to this conversation between Maharaj Yudhishthira and Narad Muni and started hearing. Yudhishthira said, it's very wonderful that the demon Shishupal merged into the body of Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though extremely envious. This type of mukti is impossible to attain even for great transcendentalists. How then did the enemy of the Lord attain it? So here, Naradji explains some wonderful tattva. He says, my dear king, the conditioned soul, being in the bodily conception of life, considers his body to be his self and considers everything in relationship with the body to be his, because he has this wrong conception of life, he is subjected to dualities like praise and chastisement. Now he's going to contrast that. Because of the bodily conception, the conditioned soul thinks that when the body is annihilated, sorry for the mess up here. My computer is giving me a little problem. Hold on for a second, please. Okay. Starting to give me a sleeping sign. Because of the bodily conception of life, the conditioned soul thinks that when the body is annihilated, the living being is annihilated. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Person of Godhead, is the supreme controller, the super soul of all living entities. Because this is the same thing we just talked about before I covered this section. Because he has no material body, he has no false conception of I and mine. Therefore, it is incorrect to think he feels pleasure or pain when blasphemed or offered prayers. This is impossible for him. Thus, he has no enemy and no friend. When he chastises the demon, it is for their good. When he accepts prayers, it is for their good. He's affected neither by prayers nor by blasphemy. Srila Prabhupada's purport is wonderful. Since Krishna has no material conception of life, how can he be affected by material prayers and accusations? Krishna can expand himself as Paramatma in the core of everyone's heart. In Bhagavad Gita 13.3, this is confirmed. Kshetragyan Bhiman Vidhi Sarva Kshetru Bharata. The Lord is Paramatma, the Atma or super self of all individual souls. Therefore, it must be concluded that he has no defective bodily conceptions. Although situated in everyone's body, remember what we read about from Keshav Kashmiri Maharaj. He has no bodily conception, and thus he cannot be affected by anything in relationship to the material body of the jiva. A conditioned soul, being envious, meaning the one in the bodily platform, being envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead may accuse him, saying Krishna is bad, Krishna is thief, so on. But Krishna, being kind to all living entities, does not consider such accusations. Instead, he takes in account of the conditioned soul's chanting of Krishna, Krishna so many times. He sometimes punishes such demons for one life by putting them in a lower species. But then, when they have stopped accusing him, they are liberated in the next life because of chanting Krishna's name constantly. Blaspheming the Supreme Lord or his devotee is not at all good for the conditioned soul, but Krishna, being very kind, punishes the conditioned soul in one life for such sinful activities, then takes him back home, back to Godhead. And then Srila Prabhupada gives the example of Vritasura. Therefore, the enmity, or by devotional service, by fear, by affection, or by lusty desire, by all these, or any one of them, if a conditioned soul somehow or other concentrates his mind upon the Lord, the result is the same. For the Lord, because of his blissful position, is never affected by the enmity of friendship. By enmity, because of his blissful position. So not only because he is in the transcendental body, but because of his quality of bliss. He's not affected by such relationships. Here it is said that although an enemy thinks of Krishna unfavorably, the Lord is unaffected by such anti-devotional service. Thus, he offers his benedictions even to Shishupal and similarly inimical conditioned souls. Shishupal's achievement of oneness with the Supreme Lord was different because Jai and Vijay from the very beginning of their material existence were ordained to treat the Supreme Lord as enemy for 3 lives and then return back home, back to Godhead. Jai and Vijay inwardly knew that Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they purposely became his enemies to be delivered from material life. From the very beginning of their lives, they thought of Lord Krishna as enemy. And even though blaspheming Lord Krishna, they chanted the Lord name, holy name of Krishna constantly along with their inimical thoughts. Thus they were purified. So, in summary, what Nad Muni is saying that Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna, is a supreme controller and a super soul in all beings. And like the Acharya said from the Samaham Sarvbhuteshu, that verse is showing how everyone is dependent and Lord Krishna is the shelter for everyone, whether they're favorable or not. But here Narada Muni points out something very wonderful. He says, because Bhagwan doesn't have a material body, therefore he doesn't have this dvesha, ichcha dvesha samutena dvanda bhakmoina bharata, sarvbhutani samoham swarga yanti paranta. That he doesn't have this false conception of I or mine. So one should not think that Lord Krishna is feeling pain when he's insulted or happy when he's offering prayers. Muni is pointing out that's impossible for him because he has no enemy, no friend, because he's not approaching anyone for a material relationship, unlike us. We're seeking friendship because we want something unfulfilled, or we've created enemy because they're not agreeing with us. So Lord Krishna is not like that because he's full in himself. He doesn't need something from someone. And because he's full in himself, he's not disturbed by somebody trying to be his enemy. So when he chastises or punishes the demons or the envious, it is for their own good. I heard a nice lecture by His Grace Radhesham Prabhu where he was talking about the example of Indradev and in Govardhan Leela. And he said, nature of Lord's correction of the devotee is that Lord can discipline the devotee, just like spiritual master. To become a disciple means you accept getting disciplined and getting some neem treatment, as Sacinandana Maharaj calls it. But Radhesham Prabhu says, disciplined but never disowned. Likewise, when he accepts the prayers of the devotees, it's also for the devotees' good, because he's affected neither by prayers or by somebody approaching him negatively. So the point here that's being made by Nad Muni is if the jiva that's materially conditioned, meaning thinking on the bodily platform, can concentrate their mind on the Lord by any method, whether it's in favor or enmity. Of course, Srila Prabhupada points out that it's not so nice to be inimical to the Lord. The result is ultimately for one's benefit. Why? Because the Lord is in this blissful position where he's not affected. Because of this, the Lord can be always not just reciprocal, but altruistic. Reciprocal means you give me this, I give you that. But Lord he gives much greater than what we give to him. So the verse that we covered was O Lord, no one can understand your transcendental pastimes which appear to be human and are so misleading. You have no specific object of favor, nor do you have any object of envy. People only imagine that you are partial. As Divine Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Tagore Premanandi Hari Hari Paul. Please correct me or add realizations or other types, other ways that we can look at this verse for everyone's benefit. Thank you very much for your patience. Hare Krishna. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Prabhupada.
Thank you. I'm not so tech savvy, and I have a Mac, so sometimes it does weird stuff that PCs don't do. So I didn't want to make sure. Any questions on this pastime? None? Thank you very much for your patience.